Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game, the podcast where I, your host, Connor McCabe, bring on a guest to hear from them about a meaningful or memorable video game from a particular moment in their life. On the show, we talk as much about what made playing that game special or memorable for our guest as we will dive into the context of when they had this meaningful time with it that made it stick in their memory. A little bit of housekeeping up top is that anything that my guest or I plug today, you can check the show notes, whether you're listening on a podcast feed or on YouTube, and there's going to be links to all sorts of good stuff, so you don't even have to search for it. First of which, the podcast, Call Me By Your Game, is all over social media. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, and if you're listening to this in the audio version, you can also follow us on YouTube. On the social media platforms, you'll see what episodes we have coming out every week, the cool art that I make for every episode, and also learn about what our guest is up to and how you can support them. And as far as YouTube goes, check us out there. If you like listening to me, folks, I gotta say, you're gonna like looking at me. We have started releasing every episode of this podcast on YouTube, so check us out there. There's a link in the show notes. Subscribe, like the video if you like the podcast, and enjoy. And if you're listening/watching on YouTube, check us out in your local podcast feed. If you prefer an audio version, that's available to you pretty much wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you listen to us somewhere that you can leave a rating and review, please do. Let me know if you leave a 5-star review. I'd love to shout you out on the podcast because that helps not only my heart grow 3 sizes because I am sort of Grinch-esque in that nature, but it also helps more people find us. So feel free to do that. Lastly is that if you like the podcast or just video games in general, you can share the show with a friend, whether they have a tie to this particular game our guest has brought on, or just like I said, games as a whole. And lastly, you can check us out on Patreon. We're over at patreon.com/super NPC Radio, where we have a ton of bonus video game content living there waiting for you. Me and the creators of the shows on our networks do a bunch of bonus content every month. If you're at the $10 DJ Toad tier, you get 3 bonus podcasts a week, and that includes our current games club, which we're going through Resident Evil 2 Remake currently. And I'd never played it before. Folks, I gotta say, still scary, still pretty dang good. So if you want bonus content from us, feel free to check us out there and see what we got going on. But that'll do it for the housekeeping. And I'll finally introduce our guest for today's episode. So please welcome to the microphone, Derrick Hackett.
Hello. Hi, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. Welcome to the podcast, my friend. How are you doing today? I know we sort of talked before we were recording that you're sitting in a sort of post Eagles win glow. Have you settled down from the excitement? How is Derrick as we sit down to record?
I'm good now. I had a little trouble sleeping, but I'm fine. The afterglow of a winning game usually only lasts a couple of hours, but if they win like a championship, you can ride that for a couple of months. So.
Yes, you sound like a fan who's got the long term in mind. You've got your eye on the prize. Of course, a regular season win against the team that, unfortunately beat you in the Super Bowl last year. That's nice, but you know that there's a greater prize at stake. So, not that I've got to give you a grade as a sports fan, but you're doing great so far, I think.
I'm very superstitious. So if I allow myself to get too excited, then I feel like I'm jinxing the team. And then
yes.
So I have to keep myself centered and go, okay, that was fine. On to the next one. And so I have to be very zen-like as a fan.
Yes, it is quite a struggle as a sports fan to, let yourself enjoy something while also temper your attitude, your mood, your expectations. Because I think, we've probably all interacted with sports fans that are, as I would say, over the line.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I think all I was trying to say is it's like a tough line to walk, as I'm sure you know. And sounds like you're a fairly measured sports fan from what I can tell.
Yeah, yeah. I have a lot of like superstitions. If I don't watch the game, maybe I'm out or I'm on the road or
Yes.
something, and they lose, I sort of feel like it's my fault.
Yeah.
And but then when it comes to like the Phillies, which I'm sort of semi a fan of, like if I watch the Phillies, I can't watch the Phillies game because I jinxed them. So
Yeah.
I have to always just keep update on like the ESPN app. I can't actually watch the Phillies game because they'll lose. That's how I am.
Totally. Interesting. It's funny that you say that because as much as I've shed some superstition as a sports fan, I still know that I have a lot of that. For example, last Friday, I was getting ready to go out for the night, and I happen to be a Sacramento Kings fan, and
Oh wow.
so very, very rare time to be a rare time that it's good to be a Kings fan currently.
hmm
But they were playing on like I think ESPN against the Spurs, and when I turned the game on, they had a 16-point lead, and I thought surely this can't go wrong. And truly, within minutes of me like sitting down, eating at the table, watching the game, that lead evaporated to 2 points, and it was just every disaster that could have happened felt like it did, and so. They ended up winning the game. They're on something like a 6-game winning streak. But when it just felt so on the nose as a superstitious sports fan.
Yep.
Yeah, way too much. Anyway, we talked about sports a lot, which happens sometimes on the podcast. I know this is a video game show, but like, hey, I'm always down to talk sports with someone, especially if I'm like, ooh, that's something that can connect us. But Derrick, I know you through the Los Angeles improv community. You're currently on the Herald team Rumors at the UCB Theater.
Yes. Yep.
But what do you want to share with the listener about yourself? How do you want to fill in your biography today?
Oh wow. Oof.
I did put a lot of weight on it just now. I feel like
Yeah, that's fine.
Let's tone it back. It's maybe a biography for well, I won't say dating profile because you're married, right?
I am married. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So maybe it's just like a blurb on your gamer profile.
Okay. Well, I've been gaming. Well, I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, born and raised. But I've been in LA now for almost 8 years.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah. As far as gaming, I've been gaming I'm 42, so I've been gaming for like 35 plus years.
Yeah, just a few years. Did you?
Yeah.
Can I ask? Did you move out to LA to pursue like entertainment, improv? I'm curious.
No, I actually moved for love.
Whoa.
Yeah, I met my wife during the Del Close Marathon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I met her. We started dating, and when we started dating, she was like, "Hey, in a couple of months, I'm going to move to LA because I want to pursue writing and acting."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, well then that's fine. Let's just date, and then when you go, and it won't be the big." But then it's sort of like we fell in love, and then after like a couple of months, I was like, "You know what? I'll go with you."
Yeah.
So she moved later that year, and then I moved the following year. So she flew back to Philly, and then we drove cross country together.
Amazing. Gosh, just in a time of year that's getting cold and people are lonely, that is a heartwarming story of love. Especially, it's kind of cool that you were like, yeah, we'll just take it one day at a time. It's no big deal. This is going to end, and then that happens.
Yeah.
My gosh. Yeah. That's amazing. So were you visiting New York for DCM? Was she also from Philly or somewhere else?
No, she's from a lot of places. She's lived in like Australia. She's lived in Canada. She's lived in Arizona, Texas.
Wow.
But she was living in New York pursuing like comedy and doing improv and stuff. And
Okay, cool.
I was living in Philly, and I would commute to take classes at UCB New York.
Okay, wow. Did you happen to know David Dinella before you moved out here?
Yes, I know David Anello through FIT, aka Philly Improv Theater.
That's amazing. Did Corinne Wells also do stuff there? Yes.
Yep, I know Corinne as well.
Gosh,
Yep.
that's amazing. I've known David for at this point 5 years, I think. But I just met Corinne this last year, and we played baseball together.
Wow.
but I just know there's like a few like Philadelphia stalwarts, and I guess we can add you to the list.
Yep. Yeah, I know a good chunk of Philly people who are out here.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
There's dozens of us, dozens. Yeah.
That's a Tobias quote, right? That's not Buster. I think it's Tobias, who's talking about the never nudes or something like
I
that.
think so, yeah.
Great Arrested Development quote. So that's why you moved here. What do you want to tell us about yourself now? Obviously, you're a performer on Herald Night on a fantastic team. Is there anything else you want the listener to know?
Other than that, I'm also part-time actor.
Yeah,
but I've only booked maybe like 1 or 2 commercials, and I still go out all the time. And
yeah,
that's pretty much it.
Hey, we count that as also a part-time actor. I feel like you put it really well. Well, that's awesome, dude. Thank you so much for telling us a bit more about yourself, and it was a sneaky way that I could learn more about you. And now if I ever meet your wife, I'll be like, well, I know how this all happened. But that being said, we're here to talk video games. Before we dive into your, general history with games, would you do me a favor and call me by your game and tell us what you brought on for the main event later?
So my game is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade game. There's an NES game by that name called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual coin-operated cabinet, the arcade game.
This is fantastic. I'm excited about this for a lot of reasons, part of which is the NES version I do love and have still, and I grew up with it, but I'm really excited to talk about an arcade game specifically, because we don't get a lot of that talk here. Yeah. So pumped to talk to you about that for the main event later. I've actually got some Turtles figures that I'll have to just bust out after the break. But let's hear about your history with games. Do you remember when you first took an interest?
Yes. So there's a picture my mom has. I wish I could send it to you, but my mom would have to go through a bunch of boxes and find it. But there's so my mom's first cousin, Deb, had a Atari 2600, I think it's called.
Okay.
And she had Pac-Man. And there's a picture of me playing Pac-Man holding the controller.
Oh, man.
And I remember vividly playing that. And I remember it being very hard. And I remember her setting the difficulty to 1 ghost. So only 1 ghost chased you around the maze. And I still was terrible at it.
Yes.
Yeah. Sort of my earliest memory of video games.
Okay, cool. From that point, I mean, obviously you were very young. Was it something that you were feverishly hunting after that? Did you have to have a few more sort of like catalyst moments to kick you off as a gamer? I'm kind of curious.
What really kicked it off is when I got my first home console.
Okay, cool.
A few years later. So I want to say I must have been maybe 7 or so when I got my NES, my home NES.
Okay.
With the light zapper, and it had the Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt game.
Yes.
Yes.
That's awesome. Just for kids of, like a whole generation, I feel like that was the starting point for so many. I'm like a little younger than you. I just turned 33 last week, and my first console was also an original Nintendo, even though I was born 5 years after launch. It's just like what my parents had.
Well, okay.
So I fell in love with that and didn't even know that a Super Nintendo existed until I went to a friend's house at age 8 or 9.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It was almost like I was just not quite someone who was kept in a bunker, but I just didn't know it existed. Anyway, that's so cool. Was this something that you shared with siblings? Was it just yours?
No, I have a younger brother who's 4 years younger than me. And then, all of my friends in my neighborhood also had, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, and stuff like that. Okay,
cool. Did you start, seeking out other games? Were you just, playing the ones you had like crazy?
Oh, my God. So I used to read a lot of gaming magazines growing up.
Ooh.
So the bigger ones were, Game Pro or Electronic Gaming Monthly. Mm-hmm. So I knew about games all the time. I was always flipping through books and stuff like that in the lunchroom and stuff.
Yeah.
And then also, my friends and I would always, trade games and borrow each other's games. So I had, a little networking system. So I knew about pretty much I had my ear to the ground about games.
Yes. Okay, very cool. So, the NES being your first, you had mentioned Mario. I'm sure with the Zapper you had Duck Hunt at some point.
Hmm.
Are there any other NES titles that like you still remember fondly to this day?
Oh yeah, one of my we played recently, and I still can't beat is Ninja. Is it Gaiden? Or Gaiden?
Oh, Ninja Gaiden, yes.
Yes, the original Ninja Gaiden. I recently replayed it just to see if I could revisit it, and maybe I'm a little more skilled as a gamer. I could beat the
Yeah.
game, and no, I can get as far as I did back then. It's still really hard and really frustrating.
Gosh, there are games like that I also like to think my skills now as a gamer have grown immensely, but I forget that some of those old ones, it was about like memorization and just like beating your head against the wall to get through something.
Yep, I think also like a Mike Tyson punch out falls into that category. Like I
Nice.
can still get to Mike Tyson, still can't beat him.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So the NES was big for you. Was this just like the first of many consoles that you had?
Yep.
Okay.
So it was NES to SNES to N64 to PlayStation, the PlayStation 2,
Okay,
3,
cool.
4, yeah. So,
So so like the PlayStation, was that your first non-Nintendo console?
yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Do you remember like like hearing that you were started off with Nintendo and kept going with it? Uh do you remember what it was that got you interested in the PlayStation?
Ooh, probably like the commercial, probably the
Yeah.
advertising, or like I said, I was reading gaming magazines, so I knew
Yeah.
about it before then. And I remember just looking at like stills of like various games, like Twisted Metal, and being like, "Oh my god, look at this!" Like,
Yes.
and I love when you were like blown away by the graphics at the time, and then you revisit
Yes.
those games and they look like crap now.
Yeah,
And I love
totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I still have so much nostalgia for like that early Polygon era. Big
Hmm.
time. Like it can look like dog shit, but I am still like totally there for it. When, I know this nostalgia doing a lot of heavy lifting for me.
Hmm.
While someone who's maybe younger or didn't grow up with it would be like, "What the hell is this?"
Especially when it's like that's not how you remember it.
No, yeah, of
Like
course.
it's never how you remember it. Because I remember like revisiting like the original like Final Fantasy VII and being like,
Hmm.
"What? This game looked better in my head. It looked better as a memory than it does now, but it's still a great game."
Totally. Yeah, it looks like I think that's one thing that is so powerful about like the remake is that it's kind of how I feel like many people did imagine it, or like we're filling
Yeah.
in gaps there. Combined with the FMV, the battle models, and yeah,
Hmm.
really cool stuff. Looking back at those early days of gaming,
Hmm.
are you able to identify like, oh, this is the genre I really liked, or were you playing all sorts of stuff?
I was jumping all over the place. Um, so like we talked about sports earlier,
Yeah.
and I realized that I learned a lot of the rules of
Yes.
various sports games while playing, Tecmo Bowl or Bases Loaded or Double Dribble.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
learned those rules through playing those games, and I learned who those players were if they had played.
Oh.
Yeah,
And is that like how you became a sports fan, or did you already kind of like sports and then just amplified it?
I kind of knew about sports and I
Mm.
played it in my neighborhood, but I think video games helped amplify it. And then
Okay, cool.
also, uh, I also collected like trading cards, so I had like a whole thing of like NFL, NBA trading cards as well. So that's how
That'll
sort
do
of the
it.
yeah the sports
Uh,
fan I am today.
I had a similar experience with like learning sports as well through video games. For me, it was the Backyard Baseball series on the computer.
Oh, mhm, mhm, mhm.
Yeah, like that helped me, and me and my friend, who was like my best friend growing up, we both refer to that series as crucial for us. Like really knowing the rules and knowing them well. He always tells this anecdote about how when he was like a 9-year old, he like called an infield fly for an umpire and reminded them of the rule because of Backyard Baseball.
Wow.
Yeah, which is just so funny. Shout out to you, Eddie, if you're listening. But that's really cool. So there was all sorts of stuff you were playing.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
from that, not that I'm not gonna dig into every generation too
mhm.
deep, but are there any N64 like highlights for you or titles that really stand out to you still today?
There's two that stand out mostly. One is WWE No Mercy.
Oh, duh, we talked about this, of course.
Yes. Because I was also a wrestling fan.
Yes.
And yeah, I loved that game. Played it all the time. I would have friends over. Like Friday night was like, come to my place, we'll get pizza, and we'll play No Mercy.
Oh man, that's good stuff right there.
Yeah, and we got we got really into it because we started our own I guess federation where we'd all create our own individual wrestlers. We booked matches, we had storylines, we had pay-per-views. Like we did that every Friday.
Dude, that is the level of investment in a game that I adore to hear about. Where you like something so much that you're making up your own not just rules but scenarios for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Did it have did you mean you created your own wrestlers it had to create a player?
You had to create a player.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So my brother, my two best friends in the neighborhood
yes.
come over and they had their characters saved on the My Console and they
huge.
Play.
No wonder you were that was the first game you thought of to possibly bring on this podcast. That's so good. Do you, I mean, while we're here and talking about the game, do you have any hyper specific memories of a moment or a night that you all played this, or is it more broad?
It's more broad because it happened a lot. So it all kind of mushes together. We did it all the time. It was like a given. It was Friday and we knew it's time. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. But just that era where we just had pay-per-views and stuff like that. That was sort of my favorite. That's what sort of sticks out the most.
That's
booking
so
title
good.
Matches and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that. This is such a silly specific that I'm curious about. What was the pizza place you used to get pizza from?
Oh, it was called Temple Pizza.
Okay.
So I'm from Philadelphia. I live near Temple University, which is in the North Philly section, and there was a place called Temple Pizza 5 blocks from my house.
Okay, cool.
I remember that pizza being adequate. Our favorite pizza place in the neighborhood didn't deliver.
Yes.
So we'd settle for Temple Pizza.
Dang, that's funny. Is I'm sorry that I'm diving in so heavy in on pizza. Yeah. Peek behind the curtain for the listener. It's currently 4:30, and I think I'm starting to get hungry as we record. But is there a Philly style of pizza that I should know about, or is it just generic?
It's sort of generic. It's very similar to New York style, but New York style is better. So I think what Philly style does, and hopefully I don't get in trouble, I think it sort of emulates New York style. But Philly doesn't have a distinct style for it to have its own. There's no such thing as Philadelphia pizza.
Okay, cool. So thank you.
Philly,
the more you were talking about it, the more I was like, what? How much more can I learn about pizza? And it's just my stomach starts asking questions. It is interviewing you, not my brain. That's so cool. You were going to mention another game on the N64, I think.
Oh, so a lot of people played GoldenEye, which I love. We did play a lot of GoldenEye. But I also loved Perfect Dark. Yeah. Which was sort of an unofficial sequel to GoldenEye because it had the same mechanics, same company and everything. Yeah. We played a lot of Perfect Dark as well.
Oh, sweet. That's one that for being an N64 kid, only really played those at friends' houses. Okay. But I have them both now, and they're so weird to go back to. Mm-hmm. I don't know did you play the GoldenEye re-release this last year?
I did not. No.
It's strange. I think it's a part of N64 Online. I don't know if you have the expansion pack. But me and some friends one night, our little video game podcast crew got together, and that was one of the games we played, and we were all this is interesting, but none of us really wanted to keep playing it.
It doesn't hit the same anymore.
No. Well, which is interesting because I also just threw together a little Halo 1 LAN party the other day. Was doing a little birthday celebration, and we had 4-on-4 Halo, 2 Xbox 360s hooked up by a cable. Wow. And I'll say, and it's probably because I played that game a lot more, that felt like it held up pretty dang well as an experience.
Okay.
Not flawless, not perfect, but picking it up was like riding a bike again. And now that I'm saying it, I'm it's because I didn't play GoldenEye and Perfect Dark that much.
Yeah. It's one of those games that I feel is you revisit it and it's exactly how you remember it. You're like, okay, there's no like,
Yes.
oh, this game looks terrible. No, it's like, no, this is exactly how I remember it. Yeah.
That's how it felt, at least. Well, that's really cool. So, moving, forward in your gaming history, I know you mentioned that you got like some PlayStation consoles. Did you stay like a dual console person for a while, or was it just like, did you make a transition to PlayStation?
No, it was. I think I made it a transition to PlayStation because I never owned a Wii and I've never owned a GameCube.
Okay,
So
gotcha. Yeah.
I made the jump to PlayStation, which then made the jump to Xbox 360.
Oh, I feel like that is somewhat of a common like trajectory, is like Nintendo, then you get a PlayStation while you have an N64. Everyone went PS2 and 360, and the sales, I mean, the PS3 ended up doing really well, but the sales sort of reflected that at the time. So, okay, anything you want to highlight on either the PS2 or the 360 generation? I
So
know those are different.
360, I have. So I have a group of friends who I've been playing online with. I've never met them. I've been playing
Awesome.
online with them for now 15 years.
Whoa.
Yeah. And we met on Gears of War, the original Gears of War.
Wow.
So we played Gears of War 1, 2, 3, Judgment, 4, 5, and currently we're playing the current Modern Warfare 3 is what we're playing now.
Okay. Dude, that's amazing. I mean, I think it's very easy to think about online gaming and like the obvious toxicity so much, but there's so many stories like this I've heard of other friends who've like built friendships through it as well. And I'm like, oh, there is like such a nice side to it as well. I'm sure you know Mikey Stevens. Mikey has like friends like that as well that he built. I think he's got several online groups that he plays with, but one of them I want to say is like, they've never met, but they've been playing together online forever.
Yeah, we're like friends on socials and stuff, like Facebook or whatever. But yeah, I've never met him in person.
That's so cool. You said you're playing like Modern Warfare 3 with with that group as well now. That's really cool. Have you, so you as someone who has been gaming for nearly your whole life, I like to ask people like ourselves this question, which is, have you ever had like, what's the biggest lull you've ever had when it comes to gaming?
Lull. Ooh, wow.
I also refer to it as the dark period for the old listeners out there.
Oof. I'm gonna say around when I did what I didn't mention is I owned a Dreamcast.
Okay, cool.
So I think my lull was around there. Especially when that started to die down, and then I eventually made the jump to 360. So that lull between maybe Dreamcast and 360 was sort of my lull in gaming.
Yes, that time right there. Yeah. That Dreamcast just didn't really get a lot of support from Sega back then.
Which sucks. They had a lot of great games that I'll play to this day. I love, I think the game I put the most hours in is Power Stone.
Yes.
Yeah, and I love Power Stone, and it's one of those games that's exactly how I remember it, and I go back and still play it. But I don't have it here. It's actually in my mom's basement. I need to get it next time I go to Philly.
Dang. That's a game that I have like played on a Dreamcast, like in this room when a friend has brought it over. Like, and that game's awesome. Like, way easier for me to pick up than like Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I feel like real fighting game people play that.
Yeah, it's one of those games that's like easy to learn, but like not even hard to master. It's easy to learn and easy to master, I believe.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So looking back for you, I've just got a couple more questions about your history with games. When looking back, is there like one could you determine your favorite console if you had to?
Of all time, wow. Probably, I'd have to say the 360.
Okay.
Xbox 360.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was sort of my introduction to online gaming.
Awesome. You already had mentioned Gears of War. What other games hit for you at that time?
Another big one was Halo 3.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any single player games that really stand out. Well, it was a lot of online games, a lot of online shooters that I played.
Okay. Very cool. And sort of lastly for you, before we head into the break, is there a game Well, actually, sorry, I have a couple questions. False
Okay.
alarm.
Yeah.
Which is there a game that you are playing right now that you're really enjoying or that you're like looking forward to that hasn't come out yet?
Oh, that hasn't come out yet. Wow. Okay, well, the game I was currently playing that I just finished and 100% it was Spider-Man 2.
Yes,
So yeah, I just finished that.
that's awesome. I think that's
Um,
how like you or one of us asked each other. I think you asked me at Herald Night about it, and I was like, anytime, and this is like I've talked about this before, but anytime someone that like, even if I don't know you really well, that I enjoy brings up video games in my head, as a podcast host, I'm like, gotta have them on, and so I like pocketed that in my head because you had mentioned it to me. But did you end up enjoying that game? I'm like 50% through at this point.
oh, I'm not going to spoil anything. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, storyline, gameplay. I love the fighting system, which is very similar to like an Arkham sort
Hmm.
of fighting system. And I can, even though I've done everything, I can still just swing around the city and just pick fights. I do that for hours. I love it.
Yes, yeah, the traversal is so good. I hosted a podcast episode with some other people from UCB, when it came out, and something I was really impressed with slash surprised by was I didn't think I was gonna like the wings that you get as
Hmm.
Spider-Man, and I actually grew to love using those things. What did you think?
I think they were great.
Yeah.
Which is it's weird because so I played the first Spider-Man to prepare for the second one,
Oh, cool.
and the swinging was so much fun, and I kind of was thinking, well, how can this get any better? And
Yeah.
then I guess with them expanding and having the other boroughs and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, adding the wingsuit, it just fits so perfectly, and it just makes a lot of sense, and it's just fun. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I'm
Hmm.
with you.
Hmm.
Was there one that you were going to mention that you're looking forward to, or did Spider-Man sort of take up your recent gaming?
I'm trying to even think what's coming out. What's on my radar? What's on my wish list?
It's been
I
an
don't even know.
overwhelming year too, with so many just
Yeah,
huge releases.
yeah. I'm excited for the new Warzone map when that comes out in December.
Gotcha.
But other than that, I can't think of what's.
Okay.
Oh, I got one. I do have one. Tekken 8.
What game? Tekken.
Tekken 8, which I think comes out in January.
Okay, exciting. Yeah, have
Yeah.
you been a Tekken player like for a while?
So I have a Tekken story.
Ooh,
So I used to go to these comic book conventions in Philadelphia.
yeah.
I think they were called like Wizard World Philadelphia or something like that. And this one time they were having Tekken tournaments.
Mm.
And if you won the tournament, you got like a GameStop gift card. And a tournament on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So the entire weekend there was multiple tournaments. And I played them and I won Friday. I came in like second on Saturday and like third on Sunday.
Dang.
So I was like, okay, I think I have what it takes to be like, I don't know, a professional gamer. I was that friend who always beats all his friends at fighting games.
Yes.
So I have like a big ego when it came to fighting games. So I met a guy there and he was like, hey, they're having like a tournament here in Philly in like a month from now. You should go. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. So he gave me his number. I came back down to the convention center for like this huge gaming tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like various games. It was like, Smash Brothers, it was Street Fighter, it was all these games. And I went there and I got my ass kicked so bad. Like I didn't win a single round when I was
Oh
there.
no.
Just destroyed. It was fun. It was a nice experience. It humbled me, but
Yeah.
got completely destroyed by people who put hours into these games and they learn
Yes.
like the different frames and all that stuff and all that. So
Gosh, it really just, when stuff like that happens in competitive gaming communities, you're like, oh, there are tiers to this for
hmm
sure.
yeah.
That's such a great story. That's so funny. Now, lastly, is there a game from your history of gaming that you haven't mentioned yet that you're like, oh, I cannot finish this segment without bringing up this game?
Oh my God. I mentioned years. I mentioned. Let me see. I'll throw in some Zeldas. I was a big
Okay,
fan of Zelda.
speaking my language.
Yeah. But I sort of jumped around, so I missed a lot of the the Game Boy ones. But so I love the original one, which I loved.
Me too. Yeah.
Loved the original. Did not like the second one
Yeah.
on Nintendo. Hated it. But then I loved the one on Super Nintendo, which I beat. I love that. And then the next big one for me was Ocarina of Time.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a classic.
Back to the N64.
Yeah. And then I never got into. I tried to play Majora's Mask, and I think I got like maybe I want to say halfway through. It was something about the
time loop mechanic.
The time loop mechanic. Yeah. I hated it, and I was like, I can't do this. I don't want to do it, and I just dropped off.
Yeah, I think that happened to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I guess the next big Zelda was Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, because you had mentioned you didn't have a GameCube or a Wii, so it makes sense you would miss, I think, 3 mainline Zeldas on those. Well, if they ever come to Switch, which Skyward Sword has, but that one also has its issues. I love it because it's my favorite series, but I can acknowledge the issues with each game. But I'm still holding out hope for like a Wind Waker or a Twilight Princess port to Switch for like people like you who could play them for the first time.
I would love that. Yeah.
You listening, Nintendo? I know you are. Well, Derrick, thank you so much for chatting with me about your history with games. I feel like we probably could have been doing this for hours and hours because there's so much to discuss. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break for the podcast. And then when we come back, we'll talk about all things TMNT the Arcade Game. So I'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to Call Me By Your Game. It is, of course, I, your host, Connor McCabe, still here with Derrick Hackett. Derrick, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, you are so gosh darn welcome. Let's get into it. We're here to discuss Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. And like I told you before the show, I'm going to do a little table setting to get us into this, just reading some very basic facts about the game, but jump in anytime if you'd like.
Cool.
So, without further ado, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Released in Japan as TMNT Super Kame Ninja, and in Europe as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, is a 1989 beat-em-up arcade game released by Konami. It's based, obviously, on the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise, including the first animated series that had begun airing 2 years prior. In the game, up to 4 players control the titular Ninja Turtles, fighting through various levels to defeat the Turtles' enemies, including the Shredder, Krang, and the Foot Clan. Released during a high point in popularity for the franchise, the arcade game was a worldwide hit, becoming the highest grossing dedicated arcade game of 1990 in the United States and Konami's highest grossing arcade game at the time. Versions for various home systems soon followed, which we referenced earlier in the podcast, including the NES, which was just titled, I think, also TMNT, the Arcade Game, and a sequel, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, was released in 1991, and they also had TMNT, The Manhattan Project, a game in the same style. I mentioned that you're playing as the Ninja Turtles. Of course, that is Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo. Just in case, none of those other secret turtles snuck in. Those new ones that we know. Derrick, for you, are there any important bullet points that we should include about this game before hearing about your time?
Oh, bullet points like information about the game?
Yeah, or do you feel satisfied there?
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. So let's get into it. How did you come to play this game for the first time? Do you remember?
I think so. So there's a mall right outside of Philadelphia called the Cheltenham Mall in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. It's like right outside of Philly. Like if you exit the mall and cross the street, you're in Philadelphia. If you cross back, you're in Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. So this mall, which I used to go to all the time, I remember it smelling like Mrs. Fields cookies all the time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there used to be like a Mrs. Fields stand like directly in the middle of the mall. I remember very vividly. And I remember they would have these giant cookies on display that you could buy and you
Yeah.
could get them like personalized, like happy birthday or congratulations. And I remember always walking by going, oh, when my birthday rolls around, I'm gonna get one of those.
Yeah.
Never doing it.
That
And
I'm so glad that you were like, and you were talking about the mall, and you're like, and it smelled like, and I fully expected it to be something horrible, but I'm so glad it was just like the smell of chocolate chip cookies.
yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
And the mall had had a bunch of stores that are now gone that no one remembers. It had a Gimbals, it had a Wanamaker's, and it had a Clover. 3 stores I don't think anyone remembers.
Wow.
And it had a movie theater attached to it. And I remember vividly, like the movie theater was like at the end of a corridor, and the arcade was like to the left of the movie theater.
Okay, yeah.
And you couldn't see the arcade as you were walking towards it, but you could hear it. And I remember like you would walk in, and I remember it being very dimly lit.
Yeah.
Like it was lit by the lights from the mall outside, and it was lit by all the screens inside.
Yes.
Very loud.
Wow. What a setting you've like already painted for us.
And I think usually a lot of times so the arcade was like in a horseshoe shape. Mm-hmm. So there were games along the walls, and then there were machines in the middle that were like back to back. So you could kind of loop in and walk around to all the games. And usually the big 4-player game, like an X-Men or whatever, was sitting in the front. Like that's what the first thing you would see as you walk in.
Yeah, kind of like one of the main events.
Exactly. So that was sort of my introduction to that game.
Okay. That's awesome. Had you been like going to arcades before? Was this like the only one you ever went to?
I don't know if I've gone to other ones. I think at that age and that time, that was the only one I went to.
Okay.
Which was fine because as I remember, that was like the best one.
Yes.
In the area.
Okay.
But I remember going in, and there was like a lot of classic games. Like I remember seeing games like Rampage was there.
Oh man.
Pole Position, Pit Fighter, Street Fighter 2. The first time I ever saw Mortal Kombat was in this arcade.
Dang.
And I remember seeing Mortal Kombat and being like, what's this? And then seeing like, I remember the 2 guys playing were really good.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how they knew, because there was no internet. So I don't know how anyone knew any of the characters' moves, because it wasn't on the actual cabinet in any way.
Yeah.
But I remember them being really good. And I remember one guy did a fatality on the other one, and me just being like, what is this?
And you were just like a perfect like example of how the popularity of that game spread. Just like seeing something you'd never thought you'd see, that's so hyper violent, and every kid's like, I kind of want to play that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing. I bet I could guess that those guys spent a lot of time in there, which is why they like just knew it so well. That's so cool. I grew up, this is a tangent, but arcades were around, but like I was still just like I've been talking about how young I am all podcast. When you turn 33, you hit your Jesus year. That's all you think about, it turns out. I'm kidding, but I just wasn't the age where arcades were like in their heat of their popularity. I feel like that was definitely more of the 80s and early 90s, but I still got like arcade experiences, but mine more were at like a Chuck E. Cheese or something like that.
Or like a
Did you guys have Chuck E. Cheese back there?
Yep. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I went to birthday parties growing up. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Chuck E. made himself known pretty well. That's really cool. Okay, great. So when it comes to the game, and when you finally got to play TMNT, what do you remember about it? What still sticks out to you to this day?
Okay, so when we used to go to the arcade, I used to go with my uncle, and my mom would give him the money to give to us.
Okay.
So I remember that feeling of getting like a $5 bill, putting it in the change machine, and then like all of those quarters coming out.
Yes.
And being like, holy crap, I'm going to be here all day.
I can
There's
do
no
anything.
way these aren't going to run out. So I remember just getting a whole quarter and this whole handful of quarters, putting them in my pocket, having it bulge out of my pocket, and me and my brother being like, we're going to sit here and play every level of this game.
Dang. Were you already familiar with the Turtles at that point?
Oh my God, yes. So like, I feel like when I was a kid growing up, I felt like you had like the one cartoon you were big into,
Yeah.
and then maybe you had like a secondary and a third cartoon that you were kind of into. So my big one while growing up was Ninja Turtles. Like
Wow.
I think it came out in like '89, so I was like 8 or something at the time.
Yeah.
So I was like a perfect age, and I remember blowing my mind. And then I was also into like Ninja Turtles, and I was also into like Transformers. So that was like my three things. Because I
Yes.
felt like the only time I got toys growing up were like birthdays and Christmas. So you
Yeah.
had to choose wisely. You had to fill, if you had like three different fandoms, you had to like find ways to fill each cup when a holiday or your birthday rolled around, so you can get like a new toy for this, and maybe I'll get a new Transformer over here.
Yeah. No, I totally resonate with that. Like, of course, it is great and wonderful to get one action figure to play with them. But if you've got the 4 turtles,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to do any. You're already doing a lot of imagining as a kid and like playing with action figures. And the
Mm-hmm.
less you have to do, like the more you really buy into it, sort of. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes any sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Uh,
That's amazing. So go ahead. Sorry.
I know. So yeah, I had like Ninja Turtle themed birthday parties. I had all the figures. At that mall, I saw the first live action movie, which I thought was great.
Oh, dude, no way.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh. You were a turtle's head.
Oh yeah,
Okay, cool.
definitely.
So yeah, this wasn't like, oh, this was like my gateway to turtles. You were already there, and this was just like, and I get to play a sick video game as them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So was your brother also into the turtles as well? Did you say that?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was.
Well, really, this is a possibly like the most important question I've ever asked you. Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle, and has that changed since you were a kid?
It has not changed.
Okay.
And
We're
my
about to learn
entire
everything we need to know about you.
in my entire life, it has been Leonardo.
Whoa! You know what? Hold on 1 second. This is I'm doing this well because I told you I was going to do this, but I never. It's not often you meet a fellow Leonardo head, because I feel like at the time maybe he was a lot more popular because he was he was the leader of all of them. But I feel like growing up and getting older, people soured on Leonardo in a way of like, oh, he's boring. He's the goody two shoes. He's this, and that. And so I think a lot of, former Leonardo heads are now like Michelangelo's or Donatello's or even Raphael's. But my friend, I'm also a fellow Leonardo guy. And so here's this is really going to incentivize people to go to the YouTube. This is my original Leonardo figure.
That's the original from.
I don't know when this one was made, but I've had this since I was like a kid.
Okay, I had those when I was in elementary school, so I do remember. Yes.
Yes,
Wow.
dude. I still have. I don't have a lot of my all of my toys from growing up, but I do have all 4 of my original Turtles figures, like literally back here with me.
Yeah.
They're proudly displayed. So that was really a really big tangent, or a sort of a forced way for me to be like, hey, I'm also a Leo head, and I've come to terms with it in recent years. I think I fell off, so but I've been like, wait a second, I am Leonardo, and I shouldn't shy away from that. Sure, I'm not as interesting as everybody else. I'm not as edgy as Raph. I'm not as smart as Donnie. I might be as funny as Mikey. I don't know. That's up for debate. But I've come to terms with it. So that's so cool to hear that you're you're a Leo guy.
I'm blown away by the fact that your original figure still has its weapons, and doesn't the belt come off? The
belt does come off.
Yeah,
yes.
I lost all of that.
I think immediately. I really somehow I didn't take this good of care of all my stuff, but I really cared about these things. So they just stood the test of time. I actually when I was home a couple years ago for Christmas, my parents have gotten rid of almost everything that I've had, but they still have a crate of all of my Turtles toys.
Wow.
Because I was a Turtles kid, and my friend, we should talk about this off pod sometime, or I should just take pictures when I'm home and send them to you. But they're just all the variations that I forgot about.
I was just going to ask you, do you have any variants? Because I had I don't know if you remember TD Tossin Leo. It was like a Leonardo in a football uniform.
That's so
and he
awesome.
had a spring on. You could put a football in his hand, and you pull his arm back, and he could throw the football.
That's so funny. I don't think I had that one, but that's incredible. I remember just some weird ones. Like my memory is sort of escaping me right now, but there was one where they sort of turned into more monster versions of themselves.
Okay.
There's something like that I remember. I also had these in there was I used to have the old. Do you remember the stretchy Ninja Turtles that they created? They had these
No.
like it must have been like new when I was like a kid, but they had these like arms filled with goop that you could like stretch their arms and legs around, and those things didn't like they explode at this point. So like
Okay.
in one of the in that case is like an old one of those turtles, and like goop is like just out of the arm. It's gross. Yeah. Anyway, talked about myself for far too long. Just to ask you if you're a Leo head or what your favorite was. Do you remember your brother's favorite?
Donatello.
Cool. So we got a Leo and a Donnie. Very cool.
Yeah. So what happened was, it was my brother and I, and we had two cousins who lived in South Jersey, which is like a 30 minute drive from where we lived. So all four of us, you had to like choose your turtle. There was no overlap. Two people couldn't be Donnie. So that's how. I think my brother got stuck with Donatello, but I think I remember actively choosing Leo.
Okay. That's amazing. So would you two, and forgive me if you've mentioned this, would you and your brother both go and play this together?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
That one and like the home version. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I've sort of bounced around as I half-asked this question earlier, but what do you remember about the game itself?
Ooh. I vividly remember the first level, which was on the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember it was like foot soldiers everywhere. I remember you could hit like a fire hydrant and knock over foot soldiers.
Yes.
I think you fought Bebop on the first level. He would pop out of a sewer and you would fight him, and he had like this gun that shot like these like circle waves at you. And like you could accidentally fall into the sewer manhole and stuff like that. Yeah. I remember certain parts of the first level being like split level. Where you can jump to like a higher level and fight up there while other people are fighting below.
Wow.
So yeah, I remember the game pretty vividly.
Yeah. Do you remember at all, like as a kid, was it just like, okay, I'm playing this because it's Turtles, or do you remember? I guess a better question is, would you come back for that game often?
Yes. I'm a big fan of the beat 'em up genre.
Okay. Yeah.
So I love all the arcade ones like The Simpsons, the X-Men. But then I love home games like Streets of Rage. I love like the Final Fight series and stuff like that. So,
yeah, some of the best like co-op gaming experiences, I feel like, is playing the beat 'em up genre, a genre that I'm not that well versed in, but can get down for. That's great. Is this a game that like you've revisited throughout your years or like gone back to at all?
They re-released it, I think, very briefly on the Xbox 360.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and then I think they took it down.
I think it was a licensing issue, which happens all the time.
Yeah, I think that happened with. I think they also re-released the Simpsons game as well, and I had it on my 360, and then my hard drive failed or something like that, and I lost it.
The Red Ring of Death.
No, it wasn't the Red Ring of Death. Something happened on my hard drive.
Oh no!
So I couldn't re-download it.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, but I did experience Red Ring of Death a record 13 times.
Did you say 3?
13.
13?
13 Red Rings of Death, yeah.
Have you checked out at all if you're cursed or not? Because that's crazy.
Yeah, so what happened was I got it from Circuit City, if you remember Circuit City, and I had the protection plan. So each time the Red Ring happened, I just went and got another one.
Okay.
And that happened 13 times.
I am so glad that you had that plan. I never do that stuff for like electronics, but now it makes me want to.
Yeah, and I got smart because what happened was the first couple of times I sent my hard drives. I would lose a lot of my games and stuff that were on the hard drive.
Yes.
When I got a new one. So I just bought an individual hard drive for the 360 and I just kept that. And then each time I sent it back, I would just send back. I would keep my original hard drive and just keep sending back the other one.
Huge. Dang. But so you've revisited this at least back then. I know that I was looking, let me go ahead and I'm going to click my link here. I think I want to say 1UP which is a company, released a version of this. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh yeah, Arcade 1-Up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Was released in 2019 as a replica arcade cabinet for home by Arcade 1-Up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few changes to it, I guess, but it is nearly identical to the original. Also, like, I don't know if you've played this. Did you play the TMNT Cowabunga collection at all?
I did. Yes, I played it on. I think I got it on Game Pass or something.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got
Mm-hmm.
it on Switch last year, and several times with different people, like me and my sister's husband played through like all of Turtles in Time together. And you can keep adding like lives to yourself. I've gone and played the original arcade. It would be fun to get together and like with a group and play this as well sometime.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Gosh. Did you happen to play the Shredder's Revenge that came out last year as well?
Yes. That was pretty good. It didn't hit the same,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun and a great game. Like I said, I love beat 'em up, so I thought it was really great.
Did you get to play that by yourself, or did you play with anybody else?
Unfortunately, I played by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, other than my friends who I play online with, it's hard to reconnect with, because like we're all adults, and then like a lot of my like my family and a lot of my friends who I grew up with are all on the East Coast. We're on like slightly different times, and it's just hard to sync up.
Yeah, whether it be a time difference or just like availability, that is very difficult.
Yep.
I was very, very lucky when Shredder's Revenge came out. I played it on Game Pass, and in 2 like 3-hour sessions, a group of friends got together on Zoom and we did 6-player Shredder's Revenge, and it was like one of my best gaming memories all year.
Nice.
Yeah, not to make you jealous, but we'll make up for it sometime.
Yeah.
When it comes to like the context of your life, you've done a really wonderful job in not just painting the picture of where you did this and played this game at the arcade next to the theater, but talked about a little the context of your life. Do you have any other memories, whether broad or specific, about playing this game that like come to mind?
So, like I said, I grew up in Philadelphia, but my grandparents lived in Virginia. And so we spent a lot of our summers at their house, and we would drive there. So what we would do is we would leave, I want to say at like 4:30 a.m.
Oh, man.
And it was, so my mom would wake us all up, we'd get in the car, and it was like a 6-hour drive. And at one point, there was a rest stop on 95 called like Chesapeake Bay something rest stop. And they had like a corner. It wasn't even like an arcade. It was like an arcade corner, like an arcade nook.
Yeah.
And there was maybe like 2 arcade machines and like a crane game. And I remember going in there and like, well, my mom's like, "What do you want to eat? What do you want to get food?" And that's my brother and I just like, "Can we have quarters?" And we would go to that little nook, and they had turtles there.
Oh my gosh, that must have been such a sight for sore eyes. Like, as a kid, like I feel like an hour drive to me felt like an eternity, let alone a 6-hour drive. Oh my gosh, it's like, it really reminds me of like cartoons when they see an oasis and it's just a mirage, like, except it's real. That's so cool.
Yes, and we would ride.
Go ahead, please.
No, I said we would then ride that wave in the car for like hours. It's like, oh my gosh, dude. Especially when especially when times where you get there and someone's already playing, and maybe they're like on a certain level or something like that.
Yeah.
Especially if they're like on the skateboard level or something. Yeah. Oh, that's the best to jump in.
And you're like, "Can I hop in?"
Yeah.
Dude, that absolutely rules. Was there, like, first of all, fantastic memory. Is there any other specific memories, broad or specific, that you want to share? Have you kind of listed them all?
I do remember when the home edition came out.
Yes.
And being like, it's satisfactory.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's not as good, and I don't think I'd ever revisit it. But I do remember coming out, and that sort of did scratch that itch of that game. And I remember getting that for home and playing that a lot, especially when there was like a code you would put in and you would get like 9 lives.
Oh,
and
wow.
that would be enough to carry you through the whole game.
Dang, that's awesome. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I've definitely played the arcade version, like in person before on a machine on a cabinet, and but my primary experience was, like I was mentioning, with the home version. There was a retro store like in this little shopping center really close to my house growing up, and we would go there, and as a kid, like that was the only what they had there was all I knew existed, which is part of the reason why I never got a Super Nintendo.
Okay.
But this, because I loved the Ninja Turtles as a kid, I think I must have seen the cartridge, because the art is like the cartoon art.
Yeah, it
for
is.
the first one.
Isn't it like busting through a wall on skateboards or something like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
So like immediately like familiar. Whereas like the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game for the NES, as you probably know, is like recycled comic book art where they all have red bandanas. Like it's badass. Don't get me wrong, but it's just not the cartoon turtles that I think I was ready to recognize. So, anyway, I have a particular font spot. Font spot? Yeah, that makes sense. My brain told me that I said something wrong. A fond spot for that game in particular. Derrick, I feel like I've gotten to hear just so much great stuff for you, both about like, your turtle fandom, the game, but also your memories as a kid. Is there anything you didn't get to share today about this game or like that time in your life?
No, I think that covers a lot of it.
Okay, cool. Well, then go ahead. Sorry.
Well, one thing I didn't share, if you don't mind,
hey, by all means,
I haven't shared a lot of my experience as a gamer today, as also being a dad.
Oh my gosh, no, please.
Yeah. Because what happens now is, like I have a Xbox Series X, I have a PS5, I have a gaming PC, and I have a Switch.
Yeah.
But now, as a father, I have almost no time to play as much as I used to. And that's hard.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So one time I was in the living room with my daughter. She's playing with her toys or something like that. And my wife is out and about. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to play something. She's fine. I need to play something.
Totally.
And so I put on Tekken. And I was like, I'm just going to go into practice and I'm going to relearn some combos. Figure out how I'm going to main. And my daughter started watching the screen.
Oh.
So she's looking and she's watching the fighting. She gets up, turns around, walks towards me, and punches me. And I went, oh, crap.
You're like, uh-oh, what does this mean? How am I going to handle this? Yeah.
And I immediately turned it off. I was like, okay, nope, can't do this.
Okay, turning on more Super Mario.
Yeah, I'm gonna put on Cocomelon or Bluey or whatever, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's so funny. Did you have to talk about that at all? Were you like it just never brought it up?
I never really brought it up, and she hasn't done anything like that since. But I realizing, because she's very, she's like a parrot at this age.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things you say, a lot of the things you do, she'll repeat or try to do or mimic. And
how old is she?
She just turned 3 like last week.
Oh, cool! Congrats to her.
Yeah, and one thing I have to watch out for, I forgot what game I was playing. She was in the room, and it was fine. I think I was maybe playing Rocket League or something. And I think I said, damn it. I was like, damn it. And then I hear in a little voice a second later, damn it. And I went, oh, okay. Nope.
And that's when the parrot really comes to bite you.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I got to. So I've been like sort of grumbling or like censoring myself or making up fake cuss words while I'm around here. Yeah.
It just sounds softer.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Dang. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure like you could probably do a whole episode on just like gaming as a parent. So many aspects of that. That's cool though. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. But I'm excited for the day because my brother also has a daughter and she's a year older than my daughter.
Okay.
And right now they play Mario Party a lot.
Oh.
So when I can share those, I think we'll start with Mario games, which are very,
yeah, great entry level.
Yeah, and so I can't wait for those days to start sharing that with her.
That's really wonderful.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you to get there too. That's cool.
Yeah, and I don't think she'll rebel against that. Because, sometimes kids go against what their parents love, but I don't see her being like, "Screw you, Dad! I'm going to read books or whatever." So. Totally.
Yeah, if that interest is there for her, like already, or like if she enjoys it, then yeah. I don't think you have to worry. It's probably more of when a parent's like, you're going to like this thing that I like. And the kid's like, why is this weird? I don't like this.
Yeah, and I try my best not to like enforce anything on her. Like anytime she shows her own organic interest into something, like if she picks up a ball, I'm like, okay, I'll get you more balls. Or if she picks up a paintbrush, I'll get you paper and an easel or something like that. It's just, I'm trying to find ways as a parent to like help her figure herself out without trying to like force my fandom onto her. Because sometimes you see little kids walking around as stormtroopers, and you're like, that's your parents.
Yes, that's not you. That's so funny. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit about, gaming as a parent. Before we, wrap up and go through the post-show segments that I have for you, would you do me a favor and just wrap up the place that the TMNT the Arcade Game holds for your life?
Oh my God. In my heart, it holds like youth. And it takes me to places that don't really exist anymore. Like arcades aren't what they used to be. I love Dave & Buster's, but Dave & Buster's isn't the same as like the old school coin operated. It also makes me think of like road trips, going to my grandparents' house, who are, they're no longer with us anymore. So I don't have those, can't do that anymore, revisit those 6-hour road trips, which in a way I kind of miss. But it just makes me, that game makes me think of like yesteryear and just like an era of this is long gone.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again for bringing it on. I'm always happy to talk about whatever people want to discuss on the show, but like I have a connection to it too. So like that was fun. Thanks for letting me nerd out about the turtles with you for a bit as well.
Yeah.
So before we go, like I said, I've got some segments prepared for you to close us out. The first of which is the Fact Me by Your Game segment, where I'm just going to share some fun facts with you about this game that I found. Okay. These both come from a great, one of my favorite YouTube channels out there is called Did You Know Gaming? And you've heard of this? So they like have all sorts of videos about like specific games, about series. And so also, I should send this to you, but this was a video they did a few years ago just about Turtles games in general. They'd spent a little time on this game, so that's where these facts come from today. The first of which I have titled Cowabunga Konami Kickoff. I guess don't abbreviate that now that I'm looking at that. Whoops. I thought the alliteration was cool, and I'm literally just putting this together now. Anyway, the TMNT Arcade Game. We had heard about in the table setting earlier how successful it was, and it was Konami's most successful arcade cabinet to date and the like most popular one, period. But it was such a hit that it actually helped Konami finance several other licensed arcade titles, such as the infamous Simpsons arcade game. So, I mean, if this Turtles game didn't have the success it had, may have not gotten the Simpsons one.
Wow, this is a classic. Yeah, I love that game.
Yeah. The second fun fact I have for us is called Fire's Spread. So the TMNT arcade game took obvious heavy influence from the cartoon series. In fact, the level featuring April O'Neil's apartment being on fire is a direct reference to issue 10 of the comics. And you brought up the original movie earlier. There's a scene like that featured in the movie. So one of those things they just recycled a few times.
Yeah, that fight scene. I love that fight scene.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. So like, it's just cool to see when they basically that one moment that's like in the comics spread to the game, the movie, all that stuff. That's it for the Fact Me by Your Game segment. And I'll lead us into the final one of the episode. Of course, the game recommendations. Now, Derrick, this segment in the podcast is my one forced tie-in to the movie Call Me By Your Name, where I'm going to treat TMNT, the arcade game, as your passionate summer love in Italy that unfortunately is not going to work out. You're going to break up. So in order to help you get over this heartbreak, I've got 3 recommendations today that all have something in common with this arcade game, because I think that familiarity should help you out a little bit. Okay, so here they are. The first of 3. If you like your cartoon arcade beat 'em up, but you need more dough, and not the pizza kind. Of course, I'm talking about a game we've referenced multiple times. The Simpsons arcade game. A very obvious home run down the barrel, like similar game, which we were literally just talking about. Your second recommendation is if you want, you love your turtles, but you got a little tired of the arcade style beat 'em ups, which, as we found out, you love that genre. But let's say you did, and you want a third-person action game with the turtles. I'll recommend TMNT, released in 2007. Apparently, just a mediocre game. But if you need a change-up in the style of game, then this is going to do it for you.
I want to remember this game. I'm not quite sure.
It's with the like Nickelodeon cartoon style, the sort of like 3D model versions. I've only ever seen gameplay of it. Apparently, it's not that good.
Okay.
Now, for your final recommendation, if we're getting older, if your back is aching, and instead of relating to 4 teenage turtles, you need one old as hell guy who just likes to chill, well, I'll recommend any Animal Crossing game, because featured in that series is an old turtle named Tortimer. Have you ever played an Animal Crossing game?
Oh, I think, didn't we all play Animal Crossing during the pandemic?
Yeah, I think most people did, yeah.
Yeah, I got heavily into that game, yeah.
So I'm not sure if you've met Tortimer, but he is in, I think, all of them, including the first one. And he's just old, but he is a chill guy.
Okay.
So that's my recommendations for you. I'll go ahead and recap. We've got the Simpsons arcade game, TMNT, and Animal Crossing, but just because Tortimer's in it. That'll do it for the Rex, and that'll actually bring us to the end of the show. So before we go and plug whatever we want, Derrick, thanks again for coming on to do this with me. I had such a blast having you on.
Oh, yeah, thank you for having me. This is great. I can talk about video games. It's one of the things I can talk about all day, so yeah, this is a pleasure. Thank you.
I love it. You're so welcome. I'm so glad this worked out. On our way out, though, before I, plug a list of things, is there anything you want the people to know, anything you want to plug today?
I am on various improv teams, so I'll just plug them. And
cool.
If you follow them on socials, we plug shows when they come up. So yeah, I'm on a Herald Team, Rumors, that plays every other Monday at UCB. I'm on an indie team called Emergency Contact. It used to be a team at Second City Hollywood, which is no longer a thing anymore. So we just do indie shows here and there. And awesome. I'm on a new team called Sunny's Best.
Killer.
And yeah, we're trying to get a show at UCB. Fingers crossed, we'll see. But yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. That would be really cool. I bet that'll work out at some point. Yeah, I'll put a link to the socials for all 3 of those teams in the show notes, so people can check out when you got shows in the LA area.
Cool.
Killer. Well, I'll go ahead and just close this out with some plugs of my own. The cover art for Call Me By Your Game is done by Glenn J. You can find him and his other great work on Instagram at Glenn.Jay. The show is produced, edited, and the music is by Jeremy Schmidt. You can give him a thanks for all of his hard work on this podcast by checking out his own video game podcast called Video Games, a Comedy Show. It's also a part of this network. You might be familiar with it. You can follow me on social media on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky. I even stream on Twitch. It's been a while, but I do it occasionally. And then lastly, again, if you like hearing me talk with people about video games in a podcast format, you're going to like a lot of what you find at patreon.com/Super NPC Radio, where I talked about our games club earlier, but I also do a bonus episode of this podcast every month of the co-op series, as I call it, where I have a group of people on to talk about a meaningful game to the group of us. Most recently, we released an episode on the original Psychonauts. I played that for the first time. Loved it. It's one of the funniest games I've ever played. And then coming up for the month of December, we'll be doing an episode on SSX3. Not Tricky, but SSX3. We're going to be, just slapping on our snowboards and shredding around the mountain. But again, you can find that at patreon.com/Super NPC Radio. But that'll do it for this episode of Call Me By Your Game. We will see you on the next